Welcome back, hikers, to another weekly edition of our Q&A here on the channel, where we devote each and every Tuesday on answering your questions. Here's how it works. The comment box is below. Throw your question right down there. That's where I pool most of the questions each and every week that I'm going to answer from the comments that I get in each week's video. Now, if commenting on a YouTube video is not your forte, it's all right. I got you covered there too. Head over to my Instagram page, Follow Bigfoot. Post your question in my Tuesday weekly Q&A link, or you can also head over to my Facebook page, Follow Bigfoot, and do the same thing there. Or if you're more of an email kind of gal or girl, then send your emails to followbigfoot@yahoo.com. Now, if you guys tuned in last week, you might remember the feud that we have going on in between us and another channel. I invited them to come on the channel, and they sent me this video. Should I install new insoles in my trail runners or just use stock ones? But this really depends on the hiker. I would say that more than half the hikers that I've talked to about this subject actually have a different type of insole that they put in their shoe. A lot of times they will start with the insole that comes with the trail runner and then change it up when they get on the trail a few hundred miles in. Now, as far as recommendations go, I can't really recommend anything because I have nothing to go off of since I don't use them, but I know there's probably plenty of you that do. What do you use and why? Comment below. Bigfoot, how do you keep the inside of your tent dry when you're setting up in the rain? Thanks, keep the great videos coming. What I do is a little bit different than how I set up my duplex normally. My normal setup duplex, I did a video on. You can check it out here above. But when it's raining out, I set up and pitch the four corners of the tent first. When I do that, I make sure that the storm doors and the ceiling of the tent is completely covering the mesh. If I can see mesh, that means water can get inside the tent. And then after that, then I'll pitch both my storm doors last. Now, I'll tell you that in the pouring rain, I can't think of a time that I've had absolutely no water get inside my tent. There's always a little bit. So I always make sure that I keep some sort of ultralight towel with me, something I highly recommend because there's going to be times that this is going to happen or you're going to get condensation inside of your tent. You want to make sure that you have something to be able to dry off the inside of your tent. Bigfoot, what are your thoughts of using a bear bell on the trail? Well, my thoughts are no. I've never brought a bear bell with me, and if you go out there backpacking, you'll probably notice that most people don't either. What you'll find is if you do bring a bear bell, after a while, it just becomes kind of annoying. What I personally do is using my trekking poles about every 5 minutes, I will slap them together, which kind of creates an unnatural sound. So if there is a bear or something out there, they're probably going to hear that and run the opposite direction. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm never going to see a bear. I've seen quite a few bears out in the backcountry. Most of your hikes have been in warmer weather. However, do you carry a fleece layer, or is the Patagonia thermal 3/4 zip hoodie and a down jacket sufficient enough in your opinion? In my opinion, it is for me, but that's just on the through hikes that I've been on so far. My last through hike of the JMT, I did see temperatures get down to 20 degrees, and what I had was sufficient enough for me. Now, what I'll do is I'll layer my Patagonia 3/4 zip hoodie, and if I need to put my down jacket on while I'm actually hiking, I'll throw my rain jacket over it, and then my down jacket on top of that. The rain jacket really is acting as a vapor barrier so that I'm not getting my down jacket wet or full of perspiration. Now, if I was going on a winter backpacking trip and I was definitely going to be seeing temperatures below 20 degrees, I would definitely bring some extra layers, and there'd be a fleece layer that would come with that. When I did a lot of snowshoeing last year, or just hikes in the middle of winter, nothing that I was doing overnight, but just day hikes, I would usually wear a fleece layer underneath, and that's something that I think a lot of other folks do as well. But it really comes down what's comfortable for you. Which trekking poles do you prefer using now? Your AT Black Diamonds or the JMT Lakeys? I've really enjoyed the Lakey poles, which is really because of the Z-style type of breakdown that those poles have. And I've actually been testing out some other poles that are the same type of style, and I'm really going that direction because it's just so convenient for them to break down and store away. So if there are sections of the trail that are really flat and I really don't want to have my trekking poles out, I can stow those away in my pack and then pull them out when I need them. Whereas the other poles just make it a little more difficult. And a lot of times you actually have to take off your pack in order to stuff those things away. But with the Lakey poles or any other Z style poles, a lot of times I can break it down and just throw them in my pack without having to take it off, which is always a big benefit for me. Do you hike in the winter in Minnesota? If so, what shoes do you wear? Yes, I've actually done quite a bit of winter hiking last year and starting to get more and more into it. I have not done an overnight backpacking trip yet. It's something I'm thinking about doing in December with a few days that I have off. But what I currently use right now is a boot made by Keen. I'll put the name of the boot in the description box along with the link so you can check it out. But I bought those specific boots because they were ones that were recommended to use when you actually go out snowshoeing, which is something that I wanted to really get into. We just didn't get a lot of snow last year. So during the winter, I am using those type of style boots. They have worked out really, really well for me. When it's that cold and there's snow and it's wet out, I'm not gonna bring my regular trail runners out there. It just doesn't really work very well. In your opinion, what trail is harder terrain-wise, the John Muir Trail or the New Hampshire White Mountains? In my opinion, the White Mountains is definitely a more difficult terrain to hike in. On the JMT, the trail is so well maintained and there are just a ton of switchbacks when you're climbing up a pass. Now in the White Mountains, not only do you have to deal with just the roots and the rocks that I tripped over almost every single day in the White Mountains, but there are very few switchbacks. The incline of a lot of these ascents are extreme, which is why I think that the White Mountains were way more difficult to ascend than any of the passes on the John Muir Trail. Hey Bigfoot, I was wondering how to get around a town on the AT, for example, to eat dinner at a restaurant, pick up a package, go back to the hotel and back to the trail. Do you hitchhike or walk? In the first 500 miles of the AT, I don't really recall hitchhiking very much. Most of the trail towns were right on the AT or just off the AT, or there was also some trail towns that provided shuttles for you to get into town. And once you were into town, there was no necessity for you to have to get any sort of transportation to the other end to go to Walmart or whatever. Everything was so close together. But after somewhere around that 500-mile mark, it was primarily hitchhiking. You get really used to hitchhiking on the trail. It was something that was a little scary for me because I've never hitchhiked before. So the first probably half a dozen times was kind of awkward for me. And then you kind of get the hang of it and it just becomes a way of life. But when you're actually in town, most of the towns, a lot of the stuff is just right around where your hotel, motel, hostel is. But there are also a lot of towns that the Great Resupply was on the other side of town, and sometimes that could be a few miles. A lot of times in those types of towns, there is some sort of little sign that you see before you actually cross the road to get into town that has information of someone that you can call that will actually pick you up for a small fee, $5, $10. And a lot of times what you'll do is you'll get a group of people together and you'll all split it. What resource exists that provides water point source information for well-known trails? Are they noted on the trail map like the JMT or the AT? The resource that I use, that I prefer and I recommend is called Guthooks app. Guthooks is a company that has basically surveyed all the major trails and came up with this app that you can use that you don't have to have your GPS on, so you can use it in airplane mode, and it not only tells you where you are on the trail, but it tells you what the upcoming water sources are, the upcoming shelters, upcoming towns, so on and so forth. It is so incredibly helpful. You can also use it if you get off the trail and you're not sure what direction the trail is. You can use it in airplane mode to direct you back to the trail. I love Guthooks app. I use it every single day while I was on the JMT and every single day that I was on the Appalachian Trail. Now on the AT, there's also another guide that a lot of hikers love and prefer. I had as well, called AWOL's AT Guide. And what I usually used AWOL's guide was really more for the information of the services in town and using Guthooks for on the trail. So I kind of mix and match both of those, and I really recommend using both of those because you basically get the best of both worlds. Now I actually did a video, a walkthrough of Guthooks app. I'll link it here in the suggested videos. And I did the same thing for AWOL's guide. I'll put that up in the suggested videos as well if you want to know more about those two. Have you thought about the Ozark Trail? I was surprised to hear you say the Katy Trail over the Ozark Trail. Thanks for your videos. When I was preparing for the Appalachian Trail, all of my pre-hikes I did on the Ozark Trail, and I've hiked almost every single section of the Ozark Trail. So that's really the reason why I didn't do the Ozark Trail. Now, outside of that, the person that's hiking the Katy Trail with me next year, which is my old neighbor, will be his first backpacking experience. So we thought the Katy Trail would be kind of a great way to kind of just get him into backpacking. Well, that's all the time that we have for this week's Q&A. If you have a question, please leave it below. I will answer them on next week's Q&A segment. Or you can also go to my Instagram page or my Facebook page and put your questions in the comments of my Q&A links there as well. And of course, you can always email me at followbigfoot@yahoo.com. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, make sure you click that subscribe button. It costs you absolutely nothing, and you get everything in return. Stay tuned for many more sightings, and remember to always follow Bigfoot.